So it was very real to me that cancer was very curable with energy medicine. I knew somebody, with Bengston could do it. Every time I was with Bill and I would say, how do you do this? When he told me his technique, I didn't believe him. I didn't believe him. I just said, well, that can't be true because it's just positive thinking. Like that can't work. And I sort of had to hit a wall with my own career until I sort of humbled myself to say, you know what, Bill gets results that I don't get. Maybe he knows something that I don't know. Knowing how to make the judgment calls with a naturally healing tumor, I feel like that's the greatest gift that I got from Bengston. Let's cure your cancer because I think I can probably, move along that way. And if it's not working, I kind of know the signs and can tell you. But it's a very, you have to really, the people I've helped have felt from a very deep place that this is the right thing for them. And it's not that they believed in it, but they knew that it was important to do. They were actually quite skeptical. They had no idea if it was going to work. It's an imaginary tool. It doesn't mean it's not a real tool. It's a tool of the imagination. And the idea is that your imagination affects this information field that's around you. We have a thought and we have an emotional response to that thought. And then there's a result of it. And then if I have a positive thought, I might have a happy feeling or a positive feeling. And then my points of view and my awareness will be such that I can create more positive things. Now that's what we're all familiar with. That's like manifesting 101. That's like power of positive thinking. And that's true on a certain level. It hits a ceiling. And I think it's just so interesting because Bengston's method goes through that ceiling. The world of thinking and the world of beyond thinking, in order for it to reach into our bodies and make a difference, has to come through the emotional realm. And so what Bengston method is they say, well, spin your cycle while you have strong emotion. So it's just brilliant because what do you do with your fear? And if you have cancer and you don't have periodic waves of fear, you're really in denial. And that causes cancer, so it's not healthy. So it's a little healthier to actually feel your fear and cycle. And the fear finishes very quickly, and you're actually using your emotional energy that might be termed negative to fuel your cycle of all these positive images that are going on in your head. How could I be curing cancer if I wasn't holy? Well, you don't have to be. You just have to do this tool. And the problem is that people don't know how to manage the naturally healing tumor. They don't know how to tell if they're doing it right or wrong, or just how to be with the process. It's not how to do the image cycling. It's how to be with the naturally healing tumor that I think stops a lot of people. I take the laying on of hands very literally. When somebody puts their hands on you and they're healing you, it tremendously amplifies the results. And if I tell you to do this technique when you have a strong emotion, it puts you into the place of observer. And that's a free place to be. And that raises your vibration, for lack of a better word. And it really enhances the healing to be very clear that you are having an emotion. You're not just in it, identifying that that's me. I am angry. Like, no, I'm having some anger. I feel like all healing is self-healing. Healing comes from resonance. And when I am in touch with what's good for me, and I'm contained inside my own self and I'm grounded, that helps everybody else around me do the same. And it's sort of acknowledging that I have an agenda. But the fact that I'm spinning it around very, very fast in some ways helps me be more present for my patient. Because in some ways, all that stuff that I want is sort of happening. Like the universe is like figuring it out for me while I'm just present with my patient. And then I can focus on their process and where my hand goes to make their process work. So it's less about me and more about them. So yes, people can do this. And a lot of beginners have amazing luck. And, I can help beginners be successful with it. And so what I want to do is I want to help people kind of the way Bengston taught me. Like I want to teach people They go off and give 5 or 10 treatments to their loved ones, and then they come back. And then I give them another training or session, either in person or over the internet.
That's actually what I was going to quote from your book. So I might as well quote it to you anyway, and then you can...
Okay.
Yeah, we can I have it on my other phone here. This is toward the end of your book. When I had my first cure, it rocked my inner world. As much as I wanted it, I felt I had broken some rule that said it is impossible to cure cancer. I had to come to terms with the fact that what happened really happened. I had followed Bill Bengston's instructions, got some coaching, and the cancer went away. I had to work through its meaning in my life. I'm still doing that.
It was 4th stage squamous cell cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It was 4th stage squamous cell cancer, so it was rapidly growing.
Mm.
The man was relatively young for his normal lifespan. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he got treatments, yeah. He drove 5 hours to get treatments and stay for a while and get treatments, then go back.
And he was cured, and he's still cured, I imagine?
Actually, he's not. He died of something else, which leads me to, like, you have to be detached, because we're not in charge of life and death. We can cure cancer, but that doesn't mean that we're in charge of life and death.
Sadly. Mm.
And that's actually happened to Bill a bit, too. He would cure people's cancer, and then they'd get into a car accident or something.
Yeah.
So I have to detach and just like, I'm happy to help people with their cancer. Will it save your life to be cured of cancer? I don't know, but let's cure your cancer, because I think I can probably, move along that way. And if it's not working, I kind of know the signs and can tell you.
Mm.
But it's a very, you have to really, the people I've helped have felt from a very deep place that this is the right thing for them.
Yeah.
And it's not that they believed in it, but they knew that it was important to do.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually quite skeptical. They had no idea if it was going to work. But usually their 4th stage, the Western medicine gives them terrible quality and a lot of poverty. And me, I charge a little money, but nothing like what the cancer treatments charge. And they don't want to just sit there and die, so they come to me. And then because they think they might die and they're sort of making their peace with that, they get better. And so it's like they're my ideal patient. In some ways, my ideal patient is a 4th stage person where the whole culture no longer is telling him he has to go get chemo, he has to go get radiation, he has to go do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Because we need our families. The last thing I want to do is, I don't think it would work if your whole family was hating you. It would be such a burden.
And people are really, really scared of cancer as well. It's a scary thing in our culture, and I think part of the trouble with the Bengston approach, as opposed to, well, it's really the problem with the conventional therapy, is that it's based on kind of a misunderstanding of the biology of cancer, which I find really interesting. Just in itself.
What do you think of the biology, like mitochondria and stuff like that? Or is that what you're thinking, or what?
Yeah, well, cells, like, people think of cancer as being some cells have got some random mutations in them, they've gone crazy, reproducing. So and then it's just out of control growth of this massive cells. But that's not what a tumor is at all. It's not what cancer really is. And this is probably fairly like recent science, like in the past few years, they've learned more about the biology of cancer and how it's really, first of all, it's not necessarily random stochastic mutations. It can be kind of following some kind of order. And it's like the cells are triggered by something in their environment to go into a sort of primordial survival mode. And then they'll recruit other cells around them, and there'll be other cells coming from immune parts, the immune system cells and things, and it'll build this kind of almost like an organ around the core kind of bad cells.
It seems to feed on fear. How do you explain that with what you're thinking of?
Oh, that's a good question. I know. But what conventional therapy does is that it kills the cells, and the cells that are most vulnerable are actually the kind of regulatory cells around the core of the tumor. And so they get killed off by the radiation or chemotherapy, but the really actually cancerous bad cells are less bothered by radiation and chemo. They're like, whatever, we're already, in like crisis mode, we don't care. So they can keep on surviving. And so once the conventional therapy has been dosed out, the regulatory cells aren't there to keep it in check and to probably eat up the bad cells, to put it like that.
That's interesting, because I was thinking that like my musings of how this works is I think that the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. And they're actively metabolizing and changing and shifting and doing things all the time. The DNA of your cell that might get mutated is just like it doesn't like go in and out, like maybe the RNA transcription of it does, but it's not so changeable. But what I experience clinically is that there's good healing days and bad healing days. Like, that's not about DNA, that's about something a little higher up in the system. So I think that you can stimulate mitochondrial function with like drinking greens and a little bit of fasting. Too much fasting doesn't help the mitochondria. And that's the other thing I forgot. You can't be fasting with the Bengston method. And I thought I actually learned about this from my understanding with ketosis, because some people use ketosis to fight their tumors.
Yeah.
And in my experience, if people are fasting or they're in ketosis, the Bengston method doesn't work on them. I don't get that tumor cooling down. And that does not mean that it's not the good path for them to do, and that it won't cure their cancer or help their cancer to do it that way. It just doesn't fit with what I do. So I like people to have a little bit of carb in their diet, not a lot, no sugar, but just a little bit of carb, just to not be in ketosis or like ketosis.
Again, it's almost like the opposite kind of rationale to other therapies.
Yeah. And it's working on like, okay, there's this deep inner, no, there is this whole psychospiritual aspect of what I do. I'm not just doing a method at people. They're not like paying me to get their cancer cured. They're very much participating, and I help them relate to the process. So, like animals, people get in their own way. Animals are naturally detached, but people.
That's right, because you work with animals as well, don't you? And you find them easier, I think you've told me before.
You get better in a couple treatments. Like I have this one dog, I think he got better the first treatment, and we're like still working just because we love him and we think that maybe but his tumor just is like getting better, and they're not springing for CAT scans and PET scans and whatever, I don't know, whatever scans that you would diagnose them with, but it's like they get better so fast. If it's a dog that's really young, I have more experience with dogs than cats. Dogs sort of sit still, and it's a laying on of hands technique. So when I work with cats, I have to train people how to do it so that when the cat wants to be petted, then you put your hands on, and then you do distance healing when they don't particularly feel like being touched. So every species has their own little tweaky way of bringing the energy medicine to them. They're different. They're set up different, and people have their own. People have to participate. One of my cures, she had a tumor this as big as a grapefruit on her eye, and it shrunk until it was about just a little like the size of a walnut. And she went to her cardiologist, got a clean bill of health, came home and had a heart attack. And it's like, it wasn't all gone. I didn't document it. It's like, didn't die of cancer. Her cancer was, and she went to the cardiologist, and they were all like, what happened? Did you do chemo? Did you do chemo like we told you to? She was like 88 years old. It was probably her time to go, kind of thing. And anyway, I got off track with that. I don't know why I'm telling you that, but
that was it's interesting.
So But tell me, like, what did you, like when we started working together, Joseph, because I have my patients listen to Bengston's audio so that they kind of get that orientation. What did you find that was a little different about what I did? You know, because I do feel like I honor Bengston's method in my work, but I've sort of added things to it, and I come at it at different angles, and it may have morphed into something slightly different. I don't know. But what was your experience working with me?
Yeah, well, like the training audio does make it seem kind of difficult, but
Bengston's audio.
And it kind of is. Like there's a trick to it, and it does take practice. It definitely takes practice, but you kind of simplified it a lot and just said like what it actually involves is this rapid mental image cycling, which is you get a list of things you want for yourself, whether they be events or material things, holidays, whatever, and you cycle images of them through your mind really, really quickly. And so you do this and you practice it. You start off slow and you get faster and faster, and then it gets to a point where you're not sure if you're just imagining it or if it's really happening. And so your kind
that's
of
where
guidance,
that's where most people quit right there.
Yeah, but your guidance was like, if you're imagining you're doing it, you're probably doing it, kind of thing. So
well, it's an imaginary exercise. So if I tell you to imagine an elephant and you imagine an elephant, well, you're doing it. You know, because it's an imaginary tool.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not a real tool. It's a tool of the imagination. And the idea is that your imagination affects this information field that's around you. Yeah. And so I was working with somebody last night, like, I don't know if I can imagine anything. And there's two things that happen. Sometimes when you're scared, you can't imagine.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you're getting really senile, you can't imagine. You just can't hold thoughts in your head. And I've got workarounds for both of them. So.
When you're tired, too, like I find when I'm a bit more awake, I feel like I'm doing it better.
Yeah, but you practice and you get it so that whenever you're feeling a strong emotion, you turn on your cycle, and it becomes just part of your energetic apparatus. It's become part of just what I do.
Because that's the other part of it, isn't it? It's the emotional part that you do this cycling thing when you're experiencing a strong emotion.
Yeah. Oh, I can talk about that. You want to hear about that one?
Sure.
So when we are in normal time, in our normal Muggle world, we have a thought and we have an emotional response to that thought, and then there's a result of it. So if I think a very negative thought, I'll have a negative emotion to it, and then it's more likely that negative things will happen. And then if I have a positive thought, I might have a happy feeling or a positive feeling, and then my points of view and my awareness will be such that I can create more positive things. Now that's what we're all familiar with. That's like manifesting 101. That's like power of positive thinking. And that's true on a certain level. It doesn't cure cancer though.
It seems to be, yeah, right.
You know, it doesn't, there's a limit. It hits a ceiling. And I think it's just so interesting because Bengston's method goes through that ceiling, and he uses the technique of speed. And what I've done is I've linked that with my sound healing. So I do I do acutonic sound healing. I combine sound with my acupuncture. I use tuning forks. I use bowls, bells, everything. And my octave resonance healing approach is about these octaves of vibration that go up, 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 up. And as we go higher and higher and higher in vibration, we're actually going to a higher speed. So a higher note, like a middle C, and the C above it is twice as fast as the one below it, and every octave is twice as fast, and you go faster and faster and faster. So when you're spinning your images so very, very fast, you start to detach. Oh gosh, I can do this much better. Let me back up a bit. Okay, so when we are, the normal way that we manifest, we have to be very pure and holy. And we have to, in order to be really aligned with bringing something from heaven to earth, bringing an idea into reality, we have to be so congruent with it that there's nothing in the way of it. And I can guarantee you that if you're wanting to be congruent with your desire to cure cancer, that your unconscious is telling you that it's impossible. Because that's what we're embedded in our culture. And you go, no, I believe it's I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible. But it's a really hard current to buck, all of culture. And so part of you has the foot on the gas. Of course, you want to believe in it, and you're trying to be very congruent with it. But what happens is that you then, it hits this ceiling. And what I've come to know is that belief itself is a ceiling. The fact that you believe you can do it actually is a ceiling, because if you believe that you can do something, it's almost like you're also putting out the stick that you can't do it too. So you're still in this duality. Mm-hmm. And the place of cancer healing comes from beyond duality. So as strong as you believe, you're putting the lid and you're blocking the actual healing that could happen. Mm-hmm. So I think a better, and yet I think in my experience, it bears that the world of thinking and the world of beyond thinking, in order for it to reach into our bodies and make a difference, has to come through the emotional realm. And so what Bengston method is they say, well, spin your cycle while you have strong emotion. Mm-hmm. So it's just brilliant, because what do you do with your fear? And if you have cancer and you don't have periodic waves of fear, you're really in denial. And that causes cancer, so it's not healthy.
Right.
So it's a little healthier to actually feel your fear and cycle. Mm-hmm. And the fear finishes very quickly, and you're actually using your emotional energy that might be termed negative to fuel your cycle of all these positive images that are going on in your head.
And somehow that does the thing. Whatever happens, yeah.
Yeah. If the technology, and I know this is a metaphor, but when we're talking about things that aren't physical, you have to have some sort of way to picture them. Mm-hmm. So I think of as the physical is the stuff that is similar with minerals and like hard things. And then there's the life force that we have with plants. And then we have this, the astral realm, which is emotions and images, which animals can do, and we share with animals. And then we have these higher realms, which I call spiritual, and they're beyond emotion, they're beyond images, they're that place of faith and not belief, but just a knowing that there is a beyond because of the evidence. Mm. Then if we put our intention that we'd like the cancer cured, we put all our desires in our cycle up, but we spin them so hard that we know that they're there, but we're not attached to them because they're spinning so fast. That again confuses this matrix that we're in, and the very matrix that sort of holds this reality in shape kind of opens, and source can pour through, and cancer can get the information it needs to die. Does that make any sense?
Well, to reprogram itself, yeah.
So this confusing, and I know from before whenever something is really true, it usually has paradox and humor in it. There's like something that's sort of funny about it, or it has two things happening that shouldn't happen at the same time. And so what the Bengston method does is it actually is a tool that manufactures that phenomenon. And remember you said that I was like, have I broken some rule? Because I felt like I still had resentments and flaws in my life. I wasn't a holy person. I didn't think, how could I be curing cancer if I wasn't holy? Well, you don't have to be. You just have to do this tool. And the problem is that people don't know how to manage the naturally healing tumor. They don't know how to tell if they're doing it right or wrong, or just how to be with the process. It's not how to do the image cycling. It's how to be with the naturally healing tumor that I think stops a lot of people.
And that's where the
Really,
role of a healer kind of comes in as well, because people can do this for themselves. And I think when you have patients, you get them to do the healing as well themselves if they're able to. And perhaps in the future there'll be technology that somehow utilizes the same mechanisms that this involves, but there will still always be a role for healers, won't there?
well, I think that I take the laying on of hands very literally. When somebody puts their hands on you and they're healing you, it tremendously amplifies the results. So when I have my patients do the image cycling for themselves, that's so they can participate. But I don't think, well, one person seemed to do a lot of the work herself. She could, when her tumor felt a certain itchy, weird way, she was able to spin her cycle and it would calm down. So but most of my patients aren't able to do that. I don't know if she was just special or whatever, but I need them to be cycling when they have strong emotion, because I think the reason I like that, and maybe the reason why it works, is because the realm of freedom is when we are able to observe our own process. And if I tell you to do this technique when you have a strong emotion, it puts you into the place of observer. And that's a free place to be, and that raises your vibration, for lack of a better word, and it really enhances the healing, to be very clear that you are having an emotion. You're not just in it, identifying that that's me. I am angry. Like, no, I'm having some anger. I'm a much broader.
When you're doing this cycling, you also intend healing toward whatever it is you're wanting to heal.
Very lightly, though. The fact that you're there, you're putting your hands on them is enough of an intention. You don't have to focus like heal. That would get me.
It can be quite a kind of fleeting intention, can't it? Apparently.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the room. You're there to do it. Your heart's open to the possibility, but your head is not open to it. Your head is not making it. Your heart is open, so you're holding it in your heart, and you're present for the beauty of the healing experience. But as long as you're trying to make it happen, you're going to get in the way.
No, you just let it happen. Yeah.
That's a way to actually make rapid image cycling not work. I've seen people.
Right.
So again, there's all these ways that it's so utterly simple once you're doing it right, but there's lots of little things that get in the way. So if you were here and you brought a patient with me here and we were working on him and you were like, okay, I'm going to put my hands on him and I'm going to do this, I'd say, lighten up, talk to me while you're doing it. Let's talk about politics. No, I can't talk about politics. I'm healing. I'm like, no, you need to get out of the healing. The healing's happening. You're not going to make the healing happening by willing it. That's going to interfere. It really, really will. So, yeah. I've become better at letting go of my ego, so I tend to still do therapeutic things while I'm with my patients. I'll talk to them about their feelings and things like that, just because we might as well do something useful while the healing's going on. But I don't confuse that psychospiritual transformational work with the healing that's going on too. It's part of the healing, but it's not making the healing work. If anything, it's a distraction, so you don't use your ego and try to make it work.
Okay. Yeah. So from a kind of more broad philosophical perspective, if the things we want and the fact we want them can cure cancer, that indicates that those things are kind of important.
You want to talk about why the selfishness of the cycling list? Is that the question?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So I feel like all healing is self-healing. And I think the paradigm for a lot of energy healing is codependence. It's like the old way is that I'm a channel of divine love and the healing is going to come from God into my head, into my heart, through my arms, and into my patient. And that's what I had to unlearn when I went with Bengston. I really feel now that healing comes from resonance. And when I am in touch with what's good for me, and I'm contained inside my own self and I'm grounded, that helps everybody else around me do the same. So I'm not fixing them. I'm really not fixing them. That really interferes with this level of healing. So one way to get me into my own headspace so that I can really be present for my patients is, first of all, I ground myself. And I do that by getting into my hara. I have this, the hara is, for me, is the place inside my lower abdomen. And it's like this vast place of quietude and stillness. And I just like to go there because I just learned that it helps. And then I open my heart. And then I go, what to do with my head? Because I'm very smart, right? And my head is like trying to manage everything. So what I do is I do my image cycling list. And so while I'm healing somebody else who's in dire need of healing, I have my own selfish list of the things that I would like in my own life, whirling around at many times the speed of light. And it's selfish for me. And it's almost like, it's two things. One, it puts me in touch that I do have desires, but I can't see them right now. Like I'm cycling right now as I'm talking. So I'm attached to them. So I know what they are. I have goals. I want to create. This sort of brings in myself with a capital S.
You're greater self, yeah.
My own self. And it's sort of acknowledging that I have an agenda. But the fact that I'm spinning it around very, very fast in some ways helps me be more present for my patient. Because in some ways, all that stuff that I want is sort of happening. Like the universe is like figuring it out for me while I'm just present with my patient. And then I can focus on their process and where my hand goes to make their process work. So it's less about me and more about them. And then I feel like if I'm visualizing something that's spinning very, very, very fast, that is a high frequency. It's like, that's the description of frequency, right? It's cycles per second. It's how fast something goes, how frequent something goes around. And I feel like that if I'm at that high frequency, now I didn't say morally pure. I think it's lofty. I want to be morally pure. I want to be a good person. I want to like have my life work for me. But, you know, I'm very human and I'm, you know, there's lots of material for self-improvement. And yet I have a patient here that needs to get better. And they can't wait for me to be all enlightened. So I, in some ways, part of me is up way past my ego and is just there. And I'm tapping in, if I'm touching them at the same time, the resonance, this is my pretend way, of course I don't know how to research this, but my story that I tell myself, that it resonates with some high aspect of my patient. And I tell my patient to do their cycling at the same time. And it's easier to cycle fast in the presence of somebody else who's cycling faster. So I provide that resonance and that attunement with a higher frequency. But I don't judge it. Like sometimes I say, go slower. You're going too fast, go slower. You know, because we want to play with it. And yeah, usually faster is better, but as soon as you make a rule, you change it. So because as soon as cancer figures you out, you have to always be changing it around, always changing. And that's where the clinical experience comes in. So yes, people can do this, and a lot of people, beginners, have amazing luck. And you know, I can help beginners be successful with it. And so what I want to do is I want to help people kind of the way Bengston taught me. Like I want to teach people, they go off and give 5 or 10 treatments to their loved ones, and then they come back. And then I give them another training or session, either in person or over the internet and over video. And, you know, there's strengths and weaknesses of both. It's easier with the video. You're more comfortable sometimes because you don't have to travel. Sometimes it's very powerful to go to a healer's office and have that full experience and like get, you know, see my tuning forks and get all that whole thing going on.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question? I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Is that good for today?
Yeah,
Should
well,
we
I'm
say?
sure there's lots more we could talk about, and maybe we can do that another time.
Yeah, I think so. I just feel like that I can talk endlessly about this topic. So maybe maybe the viewers of this video can help us. Like, do they have certain questions that they would like to have answered? Maybe that's a way to go. Or maybe you'll think of some more questions, Joseph.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd like to get into the nitty-gritty of the actual process more and the science of it too, and see what you think about that as well.
Okay. All right. Great. 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 Okay. Good. All right. So we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.